Well, how are we doing? How are we doing on this terrific Tuesday? It's another great day that we get to embark upon the comeback conversations. This is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and it is an excellent time. It's an excellent day, and I appreciate you being here. And once again, we're going to get into a great conversation and teaching. And as the members of the Comeback Collective Circle are starting to get themselves in and populated in, we're not going to belabor long, a quick monologue, quick thought over the past week. And just been seeing a little bit of the interesting back and forth about Stephen A. Smith and the whole situation in regards to NABJ, which is the National Association of Black Journalists. Remember when I was working on my bachelor's degree. My bachelor's degree is in mass communications from Lehman College there in the Boogie Down Bronx. Represent. And I never forget, that was one of the things that we had to graduate. We had to become a part of NABJ at the time as students. And it was great. I mean, it's always, they usually have their major convention every year. And this particular year, and I need to reiterate, Stephen A. Smith wasn't the only person who got the thumbs down. So it's not to say like, oh my God, he was the only one, and that's the reason why the controversy. The controversy is based upon the fact of recognizing that too many times we may have too much infighting amongst ourselves. Sometimes we have to look at the optics or think about, is that sort of beneficial for our community? And it almost goes back and almost brings up the whole Ryan Clark situation. I'm not going to rehash things that have already been dealt with, but for those of you who are into sports, and if you have an idea of the situation, you know that Ryan Clark is no longer at ESPN, and part of that could be based upon the fact of his respective stance of standing up for his community. He stood up, and, he was very pointed. And, this is a you know person who earned some Emmys with his broadcasting style, was at ESPN over a decade. And, so when the thumbs down came down, everyone was just waiting for the rebuttals and the rhetoric to come back forward. And it just looks too much like infighting. Now, could it be times that Stephen A may step over a line? Of course. That's what's called shock value. There are too many times, especially in this glorious technological world that we're in, if you desire for people to recognize or to hold on to your take, sometimes you're going to say some things. Now, those times when he steps over the line, he deserves the criticism to be presented that way. But there's ways that we can do it. So I'm not saying NABJ did a bad job. I'm not saying that Stephen A was correct in his response. It's just we start to notice that sometimes, as they would say, you know, as the elders would say, sometimes you got to take care of stuff in your household. Don't broadcast everything, 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 everything. And I see Miss Johnson got a hand raised. I know she probably got some insight. How's everything with you, Miss Johnson?
Everything is good, but I don't have any insight because I saw the headline, but I didn't actually read the story. So can you kind of expound on what had happened?
Well, on which part? The thumbs down from NABJ to Stephen A, or
Yeah, I'm not even sure what occurred.
well, NABJ is the National Association of Black Journalists. Think of it as the number one association for those. It's not only for those of color, any journalist of color. You see, the majority of journalists that you may see on television, regardless if they deal with sports, or they just deal with just regular news, or they're in the podcasting world, there's a high probability they got their start or affiliated with NABJ. And NABJ has been around for a long, long time. And so, every year they give their awards out for those journalists who exemplified, being, how should I say, stands for the culture. And this year, Stephen A got one of the Thumbs Down Awards, an award that they've been handing out since the late 80s. And him, along with like five other, I think CBS News got the Thumbs Down Award. Of course, Fox News always gets the thumbs down award. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, if you're getting your news from Fox, especially if you look like one of us, then each to each his own. But they don't really care for our community. But the reason why they gave the thumbs down award because they said that Stephen A. has started to show a track record of not necessarily defending African American women, regardless if it's in politics or sports. And they started going through, he had a little back and forth with Jasmine Crockett. He said some, interesting words about, former First Lady Michelle Obama, and so on and so forth. And there have been individuals at times who have, went back and forth with Stephen A. about, his rhetoric and saying that, you sometimes go kind of hard on athletes or individuals who represent our community. But then when Donald Trump calls you stupid, all you say is, I'll debate him. You won't give the same vigor or the same energy back to it. So people have been, as they would say these days, been, documenting their receipts. So at NABJ, as they were giving out the positive awards, Stephen A. Smith was one of those that got the thumbs down award for this year. It's not a lifetime achievement. They're not saying that every year because even they had to admit, even after they gave him the thumbs down award, there were a couple of years he brought his show, which is one of the top sports shows, in the landscape here in the United States and probably globally. He brought the show literally to the convention. So that gave exposure, and he has given back, and plus, as he's always states, and which is true, he's a proud graduate of HBCU, Winston Salem University. So it's not that he's anti-black, we know that, but it's just that sometimes in this realm, you can be doing good, but depending upon like it's as if I would say it like this, Nicole. If I came at you like rah, 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 and you see someone of another complexion or another community did the exact same thing that you did, that I'm rah 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 on you about. And all of a sudden I treat them as, oh, that was okay, let's have a conversation. But like, wait a minute. But with Nicole, you started, you was trying to give her the business. You was trying to, go one upside and another side of her. But for this person, all of a sudden, you're going against them, but all of a sudden your tone is a little different. And I see Dr. Cheryl Clark is here because she deals with tone and tonality and, the vigor of how we express certain things. And so when NABJ decided to give that respective award, thumbs down award, it wasn't a cumulative thing. It's just over the past year or so, especially with him now moving more into a politics vein on his own respective platform away from ESPN. So, he's been generating a lot of buzz. So hopefully that gives you some insight to what is going on.
No, it absolutely does. And I agree with the thumbs down. While he's not fully Jason Whitrock,
Jesus Christ. That's not
he has expressed some ideas that I don't quite agree with, but everybody deserves their opinion. And you know what? Maybe he'll learn from this. And I'm complete.
Thank you for that. And I know, Dr. Shaw, there was a time frame where I would say a couple of years ago, every time, especially in the morning time, if I had a little mini break or whatever, and she'd walk by ESPN beyond, she'd, oh my God, is he yelling again? So let me greet the lovely Dr. Cheryl Clark, who was probably sitting there saying she is so happy I haven't really been watching ESPN like that because I'm still a little bit disturbed by how they treated Ryan Clark. That wasn't a good look. So yes, Dr. Shaw, what would you say? Because I know you may not be in the story, but I know you've seen Stephen A. plenty of times in the household.
Amen. That's all I have to say. And greetings, everyone. Blessings. I'm grateful that I don't hear his voice like constantly. It's like
Why is
plaguing
that?
me.
Because you felt he always was yelling?
He was just yelling and
But
just,
aren't you a yeller sometimes too?
yeah, but that's my house. I mean, he would just be yelling and screaming and I don't even know half of the stuff that he was talking about. So I was, I'm grateful that I'm not hearing a whole lot of that recently. I didn't know why, but now I see.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Lord.
You know what? and we give God praise. And we see Mr. William Richards is in the building. How are you this evening? How's everything in your parts? Is it still warm? Y'all good? No tropical depressions and none of that going on. Y'all tranquil down there?
That's 83 degrees.
Oh,
Today was kind of mashed up. So,
mm,
it's just recovery now.
okay.
So like sometimes you just need a rest.
Hmm.
Take a little restoration. Like we have a lot of beaches here. I have to go to one of these beaches one of these days
Hmm.
and just relax.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into today's teaching because we're going to respect the time. We're going to respect the time. Do you remember? Let's see. That can be hidden. Let's get this slideshow working. And how are we looking, Miss Johnson?
Easy like Sunday morning.
Hey, wonderful, wonderful. So digital currencies. We're going to deal with cryptocurrencies because sometimes when we hear digital currencies, we get so focused on crypto that we don't recognize or we don't be in conversation about the other aspects of digital currencies. Cryptocurrencies is one form of digital currency. And we're going to deal with some of the virtual currencies and some of the currencies that are considered CBDCs, which we will get down into the respective space. So tonight's teaching or today's teaching is a guide to understanding the three main types of digital currency, who issues them, how they work, and what sets them apart. And so, not for me to ask anyone or for you to put comments here as you're watching this on the YouTube channel, but hopefully you have decided in part of your, how should I say, in your investment strategies on your resources. I know you're expecting currencies to move and flutter all over the place kinetically like this is 2020, but it doesn't really move like that anymore. And, we're starting to see there's a rebound that's happening. And usually, anytime you make an investment, if you're making an investment in anything and you're looking for a quick hit, that means you're just moving your money around and you're going to get charged as if like you are an employee. And we've heard of stories and seen people who have made tremendous sums but got hit with a tremendous tax bill later on because of the fact, that type of almost considered like day trading means like you're moving as if like this is like a business entity and you're not giving it as an investment. You're waiting for it to go up a dollar and then you sell. And some of these currencies you should be allowing yourself to be in a space where you're allowing for a real manifestation to happen and a real space of development in your resources, in your portfolio, in the other areas that you're growing. Now, for certain individuals, those who I consider really, really deep in the circle, I shared some information to them only that no, I'm not sharing here on live. You have to become much more, I have to see that you're becoming much more intimately a part of the Comeback Collective circle for me to even share certain insights or certain things that I may be doing or working on. And for those who are intimately close to me, then those are the individuals who probably receive certain information, especially in the United States. I don't think Mr. Richards was able to because he lives in another country. But those who are definitely members of the Comeback Collective Circle who are here in the U.S., you probably receive a text from me. And certain individuals started to take advantage of it. And even though today was sort of a down day, but overall, you can see the potentiality of if you allow yourself to be patient and allow your money to work, you will see a great benefit before you know it. And now I'm coming off my soapbox to go to the next slide. Okay, the key takeaways that we're going to work on today. Miss Johnson, can you read the first one for us?
Digital by nature. Digital currencies exist only electronically and can transfer value over digital networks.
So that means When you hear people talk about, I can go get me a Bitcoin, I'm gonna have a Bitcoin in my pocket. Someone tells you some craziness like that, you can look at them like, give them the side eye and look at them and say, wait a minute, you're not telling the truth. Most digital currencies, pretty much all digital currencies, they exist electronically. That's why when we talk about, we'll get into wallets and things, that your digital wallet, which we touched on a little bit last week in episodes 85 and 86. So if you missed those episodes, go back to digital money so you can have a framework, because this is the continuation of that. But when you start to understand that it's about, you're moving bits and data and value over networks. And that's why you may see people walking around with certain USB keys, or remembering their passwords or their digital, footprint in certain areas, to make sure that they have a handle on what they have digitally. It's not like you're going into a bank. So just remember that. If someone's telling you about some digital money and saying that they can print it out for you, run for the hills, because they're not telling you the truth. Dr. Cheryl, can you read the second one for us?
Sure. Three main types. The three main types of cryptocurrency: virtual currency and central bank digital currency.
Now, that last one is the one that it doesn't really get as much traction, but it's just starting to become some of the much more powerful spaces that we should be aware of. Because there are a bunch of central banks now starting to recognize, they're starting to digitize, or starting to move in certain realms, in the United States as well, starting to move in those realms where you're hearing a lot about digitizing or removing the paper money, like how we know that the penny has stopped being minted. No more pennies are being made. This was earlier this year, they stopped minting pennies. So someone says they got a penny minting in 2027, that may not necessarily be true. Maybe you need to check that penny, because pennies are no longer being minted. Last pennies were minted earlier this year in 2026. We do not, no longer, pennies are still in circulation. They're still U.S. currency. But to say they're being minted or crafted or created, no longer the case. Because now they're starting to recognize, we're starting to move in different distinctions, which I'll read the third one. Key distinctions. The key distinctions are who issues and controls them, whether they are regulated, and their intended use. See, as we talked about last week a little bit, a lot of times those gray or dark areas of the web, people love cryptocurrencies, because that means you're not sitting there, someone's going to an ATM to look for cash to pull out to say, okay, I'm gonna send this to you for X, Y, and Z. They can do everything over a network, and if they agree upon whatever they agree upon, they're sharing the value right there over a digital network. And so, Mr. Richards, can you read the fourth one, crypto versus CBDCs?
Yeah, cryptocurrencies and cryptography are commonly
Decentralized.
decentralized CBDC
Mm-hmm.
and government issued and regulated.
Yes. See, cryptocurrencies use cryptography and are commonly decentralized. Which we mean by decentralized, as you see in CBDCs, part of CBDCs, the acronym is central bank. That means it's usually a governmental backing. It's usually some sort of space where they are the ones, how should I say, controlling or helping to assist to manipulate the currency. Whereas most cryptocurrencies, they're over respective networks and they decentralize. So it's not like to say, if you send someone a Bitcoin from the United States and you send it across the globe, it's not like when it gets across the globe, they're going to sit there and say, what is this? They don't know exactly what it is. And they don't know exactly what its value is. And they'll attempt to retranslate that into their own respective paper currency to see what the value would also lie. And also virtual currency spectrum. Virtual currencies can be restricted to a closed system or convertible across broader markets. You're saying, Dr. Clarke, why are you bringing this up about these digital currencies? Because too many times, especially in Black and brown communities, when things start to move in a broader sense in the broader economy, most times it's not. It takes time before it's trickling down to us. It takes time before all of a sudden we're aware. It takes time for people to recognize that Chat GPT or whatever AI LMM that you decide to utilize is something that you should be vitally aware of and allowing yourself to be in those respective spaces of usage around and getting yourself at least competent around that. Because the more and more that you keep yourself in a space of not knowing, we can say ignorance is bliss, but actually it isn't. Because that means you can say, oh, I didn't know. I'm not aware. Why should I know about that? And next thing you know, someone else is governing eventually that when these things become a little bit much more mainstream or much more in the broader markets, now you're saying, wait a minute, I got to work with this like that. It's like, okay, did you know about it? No, I didn't know about it. Where did this come from? I'm used to my $100 bill or, the change in my pocket. And I was just getting used to, a debit card or a credit card. It's like, yeah, all that is part of the resource realm in diaspora, but also we're moving ever forward because just like there are stores now, like Amazon has particular, they call their kiosk stores, whereas especially if you're a Prime member, they do not take cash. You have a lot of high-end institutions and restaurants now and boutiques and places, even certain I think I heard certain department stores now. Some of them are starting to phase out cash. It's like you got to walk in there with some sort of card. Please touch your card on the kiosk or swipe your card on the POS. And then I'm buying those $40 pants. Here's a $100 bill. No, sir. We apologize, but we're no longer taking cash. You're like, wait a minute, what's wrong with my cash? There's nothing wrong with your cash. Why don't you go deposit $100 in your bank account and swipe your debit card? We take your debit card. So we must recognize some of these key takeaways are very pertinent and very needful, especially for Black and Brown communities. Any thoughts before we move on to the next slide?
Yes and yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Dr. Clarke, when you look at the central bank, right, in comparison, let's say, with the lesser islands, because Curacao has more people than us, more populated, but St. Martin's like a melting pot. Why is it a melting pot? Like we connected to, let's say, America, connected to Europe, we connected to China. The most of the things that are happening on the island with cars and all that is Chinese. And then you have the Indians and Europe. But then when you look at, let's say, the island of Curacao, they are very limited to, let's say, currencies like the cryptocurrency, digital currencies, and the works. Because all of our, let's say, for instance, we want like to get a license, let's say for Zelle, right? Everything has to go through central bank, and the majority of the shares holders are in Curacao.
Mhm.
But then when you look at it, we are connected like, we should be having, because some, let's say some restaurants and some businesses has Zelle here in the island, but they're very limited in comparison, say for instance, like Holland, which is our mother country. They're restricting, like say for instance, the lesser islands to, let's say, to a lot of entities like digital and those type of things. Although they themselves have it, but they limited, the lesser islands, which is, let's say, St. Martin. And then, like I said, St. Martin is a melting pot. You could come to St. Martin and get back to your country anywhere, to any island, and reach your destiny. That's what I mean by a melting pot. So those things, say for instance, they take it into consideration, right? And because it takes a little rudder to govern a ship, but it needs the people to be in place in order to have it done. And I'm complete.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And there may be a reason why the lesser islands, they're attempting to keep a level of control, because now, since the world has become, even though the world is large, it has really become smaller, because now information is not so much controlled, whereas The islands are going to find out a month or 2 months later after some of the big countries. Everyone can get the same information instantaneously, thanks to the internet, thanks to computer systems. So the networks, the ability to network or to control how people can really move in certain aspects is still a form of control. So thank you for
Yeah,
that insight.
and also look at it also, we were like, we were the Antillean Islands, right? And then right now we are like broken up to country Saint Martin, country Curacao, country Aruba, and then you have the three other smaller islands, which is Save Statia. They were like formerly, like before 1983, the 1st April, they were like Windward Islands, like the three Windward Islands, and so we had like one head, operating, against the big. So those things that what you're saying, right? The more or less like the one who who pays determines, and that's sometimes the bigger island, which is Curacao.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, here are the three main types. Type 1, cryptocurrencies. Core characteristics. They are digital currencies that use cryptography to secure and verify transactions and manage issuance. Bitcoin and Ethereum are examples. They commonly operate through decentralized networks. That means these are networks that are not controlled by governments. These are not networks where there's some sort of figurehead. It's basically an area where there's a space of commonality. And that's where most governments do not like, because now they no longer have control. And so the main differences are typically not issued or controlled by a central bank. Remember, central bank is usually government bank, is a government bank, backed, excuse me, let me say it correctly, government backed institution. Their value can be volatile and regulations vary by jurisdiction. That's why, I think today Bitcoin at the time of this taping was around $65,000 per coin. But we know probably close to 9 months ago or something like that, Bitcoin was trading over 100,000 per coin. It has dropped in value about 1/3, but it's starting to move itself back up based upon how certain things is moving geopolitically and socioeconomically. So that's why the ability to see the value of the respective coin or any of the other coins that are not necessarily meme coins, you start to see how their values can be manipulated based upon, supply and demand. Sometimes if they're burning coins or destroying coins digitally, that can prop up value as well. So there's always different areas where your cryptocurrencies, and you mainly hear the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, you may hear Shiba Inu, you may hear Doge, and there's a plethora. There's probably thousands of cryptocurrencies, even up to the point where and that's part of the investigation. Well, we know the investigation is not going to go anywhere, but here in the United States, when President of the United States, he came out with his own digital token, and at one point early on in his presidency, that coin was shooting up in value, and I guess a bunch of people who were some of those early adopters, they jumped out of it. And all of a sudden, that coin is worth less than a penny. And they said there's a bunch of people holding the bag who thought that this thing was going to be their next rocket ship to the moon. And that's where you sometimes have to be a very, very, how should I say, aware. Your awareness level has to be high. And that's the reason why we have these particular platforms and these particular conversations, because there are too many times certain things are happening on levels or spaces that can affect us. And if we're not aware of it, then we become beholden to it. And it's like, okay, you're still moving as sheep instead of being the shepherd. So now the second one is virtual currencies. They're digital representations of value generally issued by private developers, organizations, or network protocol. They include gaming currencies, cryptocurrencies, and other tokens. That main difference is they may be closed, usable only within one system, or open, convertible, meaning they can be exchanged for other currencies or fiat money. And that's why when you look at virtual currencies, like people, when you hear the kids talk about Roblox, and I need Roblox money, mom or dad, and it's like, because I'm in my world. Or when Minecraft was, very big, and kids were, buying the tokens or buying stuff to upgrade their world or whatever the case that they were doing in these digital platforms. Those are tokens. And even now, when we're starting to see in respect to AI has moved from the space where, and we're still in 2026. Early in the year, people weren't really talking about AI tokens, or you need tokens, or I ran out of tokens. But now, in the course of not even years, we're talking about in the course of months, most of these high-level LLMs now, they're talking about tokens. Like if you're doing stuff in coding and things of that nature, okay, are you drawing down on your tokens, on your tokens, on your tokens? And now it becomes, do I have to re-up on tokens? These are virtual currencies. You may use your dollar bills or your fiat currency. That's what most notes are. That's fiat money. And you may use that to go purchase the tokens, and then those tokens allow you to do what you need to do. Now, CBDCs, digital forms of a country's fiat currency, issued and regulated by its central bank and designed to preserve government-backed value and stability. The difference: unlike cryptocurrencies and most private virtual currencies, CBDCs are centralized, regulated, and intended to complement or potentially replace some uses of conventional money. Now, this is where it gets, where all of our antennas need to get up, because when you start hearing central banks or governments starting to say, well, maybe we won't print as many dollars, but we know that people may be worth X amount of dollars or whatever. So if you're not printing it, how are we going to do it? Oh, it's going to be all in digital form. You'll be walking around with your something like how should I say, almost like a credit card that you are moving and shaking. It's like you're not taking out another bill. You're not taking out another coin. And so you can see that starting to happen, or especially here in the United States, you can see that starting to move towards a possibility when they started talking about, okay, they stopped minting the penny. And now they're talking about next, it could be the nickel. They're talking about maybe in 2 or 3 years, they're talking about maybe we don't need as many, maybe we should stop printing nickel. And then eventually it may get to the dime or the quarters. The quarters, they said they may always be in circulation. But I know the other day when myself and Dr. Shaw went into a space, we went into a store and they had the sign right next to the cashier said, please, if you're paying in cash, due to the fact that the U.S. Mint is no longer printing pennies, we're either going to round down or round up. So if you buy something for $2.53, there's a high probability you're paying $2.55. That's sort of if they have the sign up saying that, yo, we don't have pennies. Or we're not really moving with pennies anymore, because then what are we going to do with them? Any questions or thoughts about this particular slide, especially with CBDCs as digital forms of a country's fiat currency? And plus, I'm asking Ms. Johnson, if you could do me a favor, just find out what is fiat money and why is this so important? Why I'm pulling that up as a part of the conversation. What is fiat, F-I-A-T money? And as she gets that info for us, that can add a little bit more value to what we're talking about, because we have to be abreast of this. Don't just be caught up in the big names. Figure out about these virtual currencies. We deal with virtual currencies every day now. If you're in AI, you're dealing in virtual currencies. You are dealing in virtual currencies. If someone tells you, oh, your $20 a month gets you X amount of tokens, that means you're dealing in virtual currencies, because that means whatever you're investing into that respective company and they're telling you have X amount of tokens, you're dealing in virtual currencies, even though you may assume or may think that you're not. So do you have any information about fiat money, Ms. Johnson?
I do. Fiat money is currency that has value because a government declares it legal tender and people trust it will be accepted, not because it can be redeemed for gold, silver, or any other physical commodity. Some examples, the US dollar, the euro, the yen, and pound sterling are all fiat currencies. And in short, fiat money rests on institutional credibility, widespread acceptance, and confidence in the issuer. So it's all about trust, which we started talking about when we explained what money was. And I'm complete.
Thank you for that. And the reason why that's so important, because the worst president before the current one, which most historians would say was Richard M. Nixon, Milhouse Nixon. He's the one that got us off the gold standard when he decided that he was choosing to open up the United States to the Chinese market, which wasn't a bad thing. That wasn't the bad issue. The bad issue was that once you took us off the gold standard, that means you gave the Federal Reserve, which is the Central Bank of the United States, carte blanche just to start printing money. And as they're printing money, you have to figure out a way to keep the value propped up so that dollar can be worth a dollar. But then after a while, when inflation hits, that $1 is still worth a dollar, but you need more of those dollars to purchase something of value. And without it being backed by any type of precious metal or some sort of systemic thing that can say, okay, we are moving these dollars based upon what it's worth. If the fluctuation of gold or platinum or whatever goes up in the value, okay, let's print some more money because that correlates. Now it's like off to the races. And everyone, when Nixon did that in the early 70s, everybody else did the exact same thing. So what's the purpose of, basing our, British pound on the fact that, the good faith of the United Kingdom and the empire and, the crown jewels? Oh, let's just start printing money. Just print. Keep printing. And keep printing. And keep printing. So these are some of the things that we have to start to get aware of. And there's a reason why they choose not to bring this type of information to us, especially in our school system, because people start to really take a second and be like, wait a minute, let me pause. I'm using Dr. Cheryl's thing here with her pies method. When you pause, you give yourself a moment to say, wait a minute. And you should check out her channel each and every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Speak Your Power Now. Great platform. But when she talks about the pause method, she talks about the fact that, when you give yourself that moment just to breathe, pause, think, you start to recognize maybe that thing that you're looking to purchase that you may not necessarily need, you're going to think about it. Is it a need? Is it a want? Or is it something that you're stocking away? Like, even to be in full transparency, like today I stopped by a particular store and Dr. Cheryl looked at me, said, she gave me a big hug. She said, okay, I understand. But we ain't need no more of this. I said, I got you. But for me, I'm thinking ahead. I was thinking ahead because I know, there's going to be times as we're building our businesses and things of that nature. Certain things for me as a man, I like to make sure certain things are stocked because I know what we need to do. But at the same time, I can respect the fact of her just looking at me and says, just pause. Greg, take the moment to pause. Just pause. Not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. Just pause. And you start to recognize sometimes you may put that thing in your cart and be like, oh, yeah, I'm gung-ho to get that. And you start to recognize, oh, all of a sudden it's still in your cart. If you can put something in a cart, especially if you're shopping online, which most of us are doing, and all of a sudden a day later it's still in your cart and you still recognize that that is something that is a desire, not a want, a desire, or something that can complement what's going on around you, and you hit that completion of that transaction, then that's something that should be in your aura or your space. But if you recognize you have something that you put in a cart, it's just more or less you turn it into a want, and you're just moving really as a consumer. And it's like, do you really need that? You start to recognize, you know what? No, I don't. And I'm saying, what? Let me delete that. Take that off of my take that out of my cart. And the reason why I'm bringing that up, because Dr. Cheryl now is becoming, I would say she's becoming a powerful space of utilizing the card. What would you say to that, Dr. Cheryl, in regards to how you deal with your own currencies and your resources? Should I play the Jeopardy music? Is she still with us? Oh, maybe she's not. Okay, any other thoughts before we move on? Before we move on. Excellent.
I
My
think
mic
Dr.
went out. Were
Cheryl's
you
here.
talking to me?
Yes, madam.
What did you ask me? My mic went out, darling. What did you say?
No, I was asking you about, you have a thing now that you may put something in your cart and you'll leave it there. And, it's talking about utilizing the resources, being transparent in a moment about, when you were talking earlier after I came back from the store and saying about, in that space of, just being responsible and just being aware and how, as we're having these conversations tonight about these respective digital currencies, how we have to be in a space and how, as Mr. Richards talked about how it is in the islands, but up here, Black and brown communities are not really being brought to bear or being aware of these things that are happening around us. And, just utilizing your pause method out of your pies method. Just saying, if he's going to share about, how you utilize your resources.
Yeah, I will say that I pause a lot these days in regards to not impulsive buying or emotional buying. You got to watch the things around you. You got to see if you're upset. Do you go and you shop, or you go and you eat, or you go and do those habits? So your emotions may be guiding you, or your impulsiveness to purchase something, and then you're sorry about the regretful purchase because you did it in a space that you wasn't present. So when you're doing something, like for instance, we had our goddaughter this weekend, and
Mm.
before we even got her, I discussed with my husband because we hadn't seen her for a couple of Christmases and birthdays and graduations, and we discussed, I said, we're probably going to take her shopping, what card, we would like to utilize and just things of that nature. It was an intentional visit. So that way we understood what we were circulating, and we understood that it wasn't emotional, and we understood what the reason was. So when you are doing something, we are stewards over this money that we have, and we have to be we have to be responsible in when we're doing it. So I do have a pause method, and you just pause in the moment. The I is for pause, the P is for pause, the I is for, you just take inventory. The E is for you evaluate, okay, is this a good work? And then you speak and you put solutions there, and then you begin to move into the next. And I'm complete.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And just like I said earlier, you can join her each and every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that means if you're over there in London.
How are you doing? This is Dr. Gregory Clarke, and I hope you enjoyed this past video. Now, once again, I invite you to become a part of the Comeback Collective Circle on this wonderful time frame, and not only by enjoying the video, but going to get my book, Life in the Huddle. You can get this copy and get your copy today, right now, by going to the Amazon.com website and type in Life in the Huddle. This is a great book, not only for yourself, but it's a very autobiographical tome that I've written. And the reason why it's so important, you can connect with the Comeback Collective Circle. You can support this community by financial means. You can do it via Cash App at $ Gregory Clarke D Min, or you can go via Venmo to Gregory Clarke D Min. Or if you desire to do it via Zelle or PayPal, you can simply use the same email address, esquire971@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the journey. Can't wait for you to see you as a part of the circle as we grow the community. Have a great day.